Chapter 2797. Student number? Guju covered her mouth and couldn't help but laugh. Our class never does the students on duty according to their student numbers. Luo Qingchen leaned on the table and tapped her right hand habitually. She slightly nodded and saw a familiar figure standing at the door of the class. The next second, she smiled and looked at Guju. If we follow the order, the ones on duty today should be 27 and 28. But if we recalculate, the ones on duty today should be 1 and 2. She deliberately didn't follow her words because she knew that people like Guju would get angrier the more they ignored her. What are you talking about? Guju slammed the table and said, I said that our class doesn't follow the student number. Don't you understand? Did you get kicked in the head by a donkey? Guju's words were sharp and ear-piercing. There was still some noise in the class, but at this moment there was nothing left. Luo Qingchen's face was still indifferent. She wasn't shocked by Guju's words at all. But just because she wasn't scared didn't mean Fat Tiger wasn't scared. Queen Zhu. Qingchen isn't feeling well today, so she came a little late. I helped her do her duty. Don't be angry. Don't be angry. Fat Tiger's voice was trembling. Obviously, the other side had a lot of people. They couldn't cause trouble in this kind of school. Fat Tiger's sudden voice gave Guju a fright. Plus, she didn't like fat people. She found it strenuous to look at such a lump of fat. The next second, Guju suddenly pushed Fat Tiger and said angrily, What does it have to do with you? Shut up. She used a lot of force and Fat Tiger almost fell on his back. Fortunately, Luo Qingchen caught him from behind. So, do you want 27 and 28 to be on duty today, or 1 and 2? Luo Qingchen looked at Guju's ugly face and felt very happy. At times like this, she couldn't help but praise herself. One of her strengths was that she knew how to use the most accurate method to anger the enemy half to death. Are you F*King Def? Guju immediately raised her right hand, intending to slap Luo Qingchen. For someone like her who had lived for thousands of years, she had experienced many things like this. Just like before, she firmly grabbed Guju's wrist and smiled disdainfully. Have you made your choice? You mother *Cur. In the next few seconds, Guju opened her mouth and spat out a string of unbearable curses. Luo Qingchen's eyebrows moved slightly. She cleared her throat and said, If you haven't chosen, you can let the teacher choose. In that instant, Guju's eyes widened. The whole class looked at the door in unison. The head teacher's ashen face made everyone feel the anger in her heart. Guju hurriedly said, Teacher, it was Luo Qingchen's turn to check the school's hygiene today, but she deliberately didn't do it and dragged the class down. She cursed first and I couldn't hold back. The students in the class can testify. As soon as her voice fell, several girls who often hung out with Guju echoed, Teacher, Juju is right. This Luo Qingchen is too outrageous. She deliberately doesn't like our class. That's right. This kind of ordinary student is envious of us. They just don't like us. Chapter 2798. All of you, shut up. The homeroom teacher roared, Do you really think I'm old and blind? Teacher. Guju still wanted to say something, but was scolded by the homeroom teacher. I'm not old yet. I can see very clearly. Probably because they didn't expect the homeroom teacher to be so angry, no one dared to say a word. Although they were usually arrogant and despotic in school, after all, their status wasn't that high. If the teacher invited their parents, they wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Today, the students with student numbers 1 and 2 will be on duty. The homeroom teacher walked to the podium, pushed up her glasses and said, Everyone is already a university student, so you don't need me to teach you how to be united and friendly. But teacher. Guju gritted her teeth and said, No matter how it's rotation, it should be the 27th and 28th students on duty. Why should it be 1 and 2? Because her student number was 2, so she absolutely wouldn't let herself be at a disadvantage. Duty student? Did she, the Queen of Zhu, need to do such a dirty thing? The next second, another girl with long hair, wearing a pink jacket and a crown hairpin on her head said, "Why can't it be 1 and 2? You say it as if 1 and 2 have been on duty before." "Su Baoli, no one will think you're mute if you don't speak." Gu Zhu angrily glared at her and said, "What does it have to do with you? I'm 27, how is it none of my business?" Of course, Su Baoli knew that Gu Zhu's family was rich, but her family wasn't poor either. She was the daughter of a rich family with the temperament of a princess, so why should she be on duty? "All of you, stop arguing." The homeroom teacher slammed the ruler twice and said, "If anyone says another word, I'll immediately invite your parents here in the afternoon and let them see what kind of things their daughters say in class." Gu Zhu didn't speak anymore. She fiercely glared at Su Baoli, and finally her eyes fell on Luo Qingchen. She couldn't deal with Su Baoli, but that didn't mean she couldn't deal with Luo Qingchen. This damn poor person, if it wasn't for her disobedience, she wouldn't have looked so bad in front of her classmates. There were even a few boys who were good to her, but after she scolded them, the way they looked at her changed. "Luo Qingchen, just you wait. Without Professor Su Chen's protection, even if she died on the side of the road, no one would collect her corpse." After the students returned to their seats, Luo Qingchen felt a different gaze on her. She didn't need to look in that direction to know whose gaze it was. Lan Ting, a person who indirectly killed the original owner of the body. Compared to Gu Zhu and Su Baoli, in Lan Ting's world, she was the high and mighty queen. Moreover, after in Qingchen, Su, Su Chen, Su Su, and Su Su, Su and Su. At least, that was Su to calm Luo. Calm to Luo to Qingchen. Luan Zhu. She was truly frightened. Even after an entire morning, her hands and feet were still trembling uncontrollably. It's okay," Luo Qingchen said while eating corn on the cob. "Don't worry. If something really happens, I'll protect you." Chapter 2799. "Hey, this classmate." A handsome boy walked to their table. As soon as he opened his mouth, he was frightened by Fat Tiger's scream and shrank back. "What's the matter?" Luo Qingchen calmly looked up with a cold gaze. Actually, she knew why the boy came to her. Because this scene had appeared in the memories that the original owner had given her before. "Miss Lan Ting wants you to go to the South Field to find her. She said you have doubts about Professor Su Chen and she can give you an answer." At that time, the previous owner's mood was very complicated. Su Chen broke up with her without warning and stepped on all her dreams. She didn't know why and she wanted to know the reason. She vaguely remembered that the previous owner ran to the South Field like crazy. But what awaited her was not love but the naked truth and the end of her life. Now, she didn't need to know the answer. But that didn't mean she didn't plan on going. She had to stand up from where she died. She didn't care about Su Chen. But that didn't mean she would let the person who wanted to hurt her live comfortably. "Okay." Luo Qingchen continued to eat her corn and said, "Tell her to wait. I'll walk over after eating." The handsome boy paused for a moment. Sister Ting didn't seem to tell him this. She said that the girl would be very excited and run over like crazy. But it turned out that the girl was calmer than anyone else and didn't run over like crazy. "Okay." The boy was a bit embarrassed but he didn't say anything else so he left the cafeteria. Luo Qingchen nodded and looked at Fat Tiger. "Chubby girl, go to the mathematics research lab and find someone." "You mean Professor Su Chen?" Fat Tiger naturally knew about her relationship with Su Chen. So when she didn't sleep last night, she was worried and forced herself to say a few words to her. But she was in a very good state today. Fat Tiger felt like she had walked out of the shadow of heartbreak. "Well, smart." Luo Qingchen drank 2 mouthfuls of borscht and said, "You let her go to the sports field in the south and tell the truth." Fat Tiger looked at her worriedly and said, "They're all from the upper class. Otherwise, you shouldn't go. I have a bad feeling about this." Fat Tiger was especially afraid. Girls more or less had a sixth sense. However, her sixth sense was particularly strong today, and she couldn't get rid of it. One had to admit that Fat Tiger's premonition was quite accurate. If it had developed according to the original owner's plot, it would have been a tragic ending. However, she wasn't the original owner, and she didn't love Su Chen. "Don't worry, nothing will happen." Luo Qingchen smiled. "I never fight a battle that I'm not sure of." Luo Qingchen delayed going to the south field for nearly half an hour. First of all, there was a certain distance between the mathematics research laboratory and the south field. It would take at least 15 minutes to walk there, and that was not including the time Fat Tiger took to find Su Chen. Second of all, it would be class time in half an hour, so there wouldn't be many onlookers. She wasn't sure if Fat Tiger would appear like in the original owner's world. In order to avoid accidents, it was better to have fewer onlookers. Third of all, she wanted Lan Ting to wait. Chapter 2800. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Luo Qingchen leisurely drank yogurt as she arrived at the sports field in the south. Probably because it was the first class in the afternoon, there weren't many classes on the sports field. There was only one class at most, and it was especially far from Lan Ting's seat. Luo Qingchen took a sip of thick yogurt. She put her left hand in her jacket pocket and walked towards Lan Ting. She didn't look good, probably because she had waited for too long and was in a bad mood. However, the moment she saw Luo Qingchen, her unhappiness disappeared. She knew that what she was about to say would make the girl in front of her suffer. Lan Ting crossed her arms and looked at her like a schoolbell. "Nice to meet you. You're Luo Qingchen's classmate." Luo Qingchen yawned and said, "Don't waste everyone's time." Her gaze was indifferent, but her voice was inexplicably cold. Lan Ting frowned and said, "You and Su Chen won't have a future. Don't be stubborn." "Am I not enlightened?" Luo Qingchen slowly looked up and smiled coldly. "We've broken up." Lan Ting was stunned when she heard this. This wasn't the scene she had imagined. Shouldn't the girl in front of her be panicking and desperately pouncing on her to ask for the reason? She wanted to see such a scene. She wanted to see her pained and crazy expression. To a certain extent, she was jealous of her. She was jealous that she could stay by Su Chen's side for the past year. She was jealous that she could receive his embrace and love. Therefore, the more bloody the truth was, the more she couldn't wait to tell her. Then, when she saw her panicked and in pain, she would feel pleasure in her heart. However, she didn't expect that Luo Qingchen didn't show any signs of pain. Instead, she looked indifferent. Such an expression made her feel angry in her heart. The next second, she bit her lips and looked down at her. She said coldly, "He doesn't love you. The person he loved died in a car accident 3 years ago. No, 4 years ago. He thought that the heart of the person he loved was in your body, but that wasn't the case." Her words were sonorous and powerful. She was like a cold executioner who wanted to tear someone's heart apart. This sentence had once appeared in the original owner's world. She had used the cruelest method to push the original owner into the endless darkness. Unfortunately, these words couldn't hurt her at all. Luo Qingchen nodded and said, "But we've already broken up. What's the point of saying these words?" It was probably because she was indifferent enough that Lan Ting appeared to be very flustered. "You!" Lan Ting sneered and said, "Stop pretending. It's impossible that you don't care about Su Chen. If you feel bad, then cry. Why torture yourself?" He. Luo Qingchen said with a cold smile, "Who do you think is the one torturing themselves more right now?" Luo Qingchen, you. The next second, she took a big sip of yogurt. She looked at Lan Ting indifferently and said, "I have to go to class. If you have something to say, you can talk to Professor Su alone." As her voice fell, she pointed at a place not far behind Lan Ting. There stood a youth in a suit with deep eyes. Chapter 2801. Lan Ting didn't expect Su Chen to come. She didn't expect that when she turned around, Luo Qingchen had already walked far away. She didn't even look back. Her gaze didn't even fall on Su Chun for a second. It was as if he was someone she didn't want to get back. It was as if he was a stranger. Su Chun, Lan Ting walked forward and looked at Su Chun nervously. She didn't know why he came, but she knew that at such a close distance, he must have heard her conversation with Luo Qingchen. She didn't say anything? Su Chen didn't ask why she went to look for Luo Qingchen, but what the girl called Luo Qingchen said. Lan Ting was stunned. There was a sinking feeling in her heart. She could clearly feel the disappointment in Su Chen's eyes. He wasn't reprimanding her, but he was disappointed. You should have heard what she said. Lan Ting pursed her lips and smiled. Actually, I was afraid that she wouldn't understand and would let her imagination run wild. Fortunately, I told her the truth. This way, she can get over it faster. Don't you think so? She tried her best to hide the true purpose in her heart, making her more perfect in Su Chen's eyes. Yes. Su Chen seemed to laugh at himself. I heard it. In fact, he didn't just hear it. He also saw it. He saw the indifferent expression on her face and the indifference in her clear eyes. A feeling of unwillingness spread from the bottom of his heart. It was an indescribable feeling. Are you unhappy? Lan Ting asked tentatively. She didn't dare to purse her lips. Why? Why did Su Chen look at her as if he cared a lot about Luo Qingchen? He cared about her eyes and her words. It was as if her eyes and indifferent words had deeply hurt him. Why did he show that pair of hurt eyes? He shouldn't have this kind of eyes. I won't. Su Chen narrowed his eyes and forcefully suppressed the emotions in his heart. He looked at Lan Ting and said, I'm sorry for what happened between me and her. Don't look for her again and don't find trouble with her. Since he couldn't be by her side, he didn't want her life to change. She was only 18 years old. She should be at the age where she should be radiating youth and radiating heat. His heartlessness should not affect her love for him. But why did he feel so uncomfortable? His heart skipped a beat, as if the scene of her turning around and leaving was replaying in his mind. Again and again and again. All of a sudden, he didn't even know what he wanted. Lan Ting was a little speechless. She could only proudly pout her mouth and said, Got it. In fact, she knew very well that even if she didn't find trouble with Luo Qingchen, there would be people in her class who would find trouble with her. For example, Gu Zhu. Luo Qingchen had treated Gu Zhu in the morning, so Gu Zhu naturally took it to heart and had already thought of a way to deal with her. There was one place in the Royal Noble Academy that was not designed well, and that was the bicycle parking lot, which was very far from the school building. It took nearly 20 minutes to walk from the classroom to the parking lot, and there weren't many people in this school who rode bicycles. After class, Luo Qingchen and Fat Tiger went to the bicycle parking lot. Little did they know they were stopped. Humph! Bullying Queen Zhu and you still want to get away unscathed? Don't you think you're dreaming? The boy standing in the middle snorted and looked at Luo Qingchen and Fat Tiger with a sharp gaze. Chapter 2802. The light of the setting sun shone on her clean face. The cherry trees on both sides of the campus swayed with the wind, and pink cherry petals fell. Such an atmosphere was actually more suitable for young couples to take a stroll, rather than fighting. But she had no choice. She was the passive party. No wonder she destroyed such a beautiful scene. Although there were not many people around, there were still some. However, when they saw Wang Bing and his lackeys, they all tactfully kept a distance of 10 meters. Then, they took out their phones to take pictures while watching the show. Brother Bing, let's talk nicely. Fat Tiger's legs began to tremble violently, and he almost knelt down. She had to admit that her psychological quality was too poor. Talk nicely? Why didn't you talk nicely to Queen Pearl this morning? Wang Bing spat the chewing gum on the ground and said, Isn't it too late to beg for mercy now? At this moment, a few of his lackeys behind him took a step forward, making them look especially imposing. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes and took out the birthday present that Fat Tiger gave her this morning. It was a feather umbrella full of two-dimensional elements, and a faint fragrance filled the air. This umbrella had been left in a pool of blood in a parallel universe. If she could get it again, why couldn't the umbrella? Moreover, it was her birthday present. Ha 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 ha. Oh, are you an idiot? Are you going to cosplay with us by taking a two-dimensional umbrella? What an idiot. This kind of woman doesn't even deserve to talk to Queen Pearl, okay? She's quite pretty. Is there something wrong with her brain? Why don't you beg for mercy, kowtow to Queen Pearl, and then come to be my woman? Maybe you can avoid a beating? Unbearable words came into her ears, but her expression was still calm. Fat Tiger, who was beside her, was so scared that he cried. Although she was often bullied in class, this was the first time she encountered such a situation. As a person with a weak psychological quality, it was indeed difficult for her. What's the point of nagging? A group of men only know how to talk? Luo Qingchen coldly raised her eyes, the corners of her mouth forming an extremely faint smile as she said, "Hurry up and go." She hated people who spoke tough words before a battle, especially those who didn't have much ability but liked to boast about themselves. Could it be that these people didn't weigh their own worth before doing something? Could it be that he had watched too many Hong Kong movies, or he just wanted to become a gangster? Hiss! At this moment, the surrounding students all sucked in a breath of cold air. They thought that Luo Qingchen would run away like crazy and then find a way to find the teacher. They didn't expect her to fight back. Did this person really want to be beaten into a pig's head? There were more and more onlookers around them. Wang Bing's face flushed red when she provoked him. He thought that he was the big brother of the school. His father was originally just a hooligan, but one day, he suddenly became a nouveau riche. With a father who was involved in both the underworld and the underworld, he naturally felt that he was very powerful. He was always involved in fights, and the teachers couldn't do anything about him. Of course, the most important reason was that a certain young master wasn't in school. Otherwise, whenever he met him, he would have to lower his head and consciously walk to the side. Chapter 2803. At the same time, Su Chern had just left the mathematics research laboratory when he heard the students passing by talking about the east parking lot. Wang Bing brought a group of people to fight Luo Qingchen. Let's go take a look. Okay. Our school hasn't been so lively in a long time. Su Chern frowned and felt a wave of panic in his heart. He walked down the stairs in 3 steps and quickly headed to the east parking lot that the students had mentioned. Along the way, he anxiously unbuttoned 1 or 2 buttons of his shirt. His heart was pounding and cold sweat was dripping down from his forehead. There seemed to be a lot of people going in that direction, and they were all discussing Luo Qingchen. He clenched his right fist, and the days he spent with her in the past year appeared in his mind. It was so real and so clear. Su Chern, the next second his wrist was pulled. He turned around and saw a familiar face. What's the matter? Su Chern frowned and raised his right hand. Where are you going? Lan Ting looked at his nervous appearance, and his heart was so uncomfortable. Impossible, after Qingyu died, Su Chern couldn't have such an expression. He was nervous about a person. He was nervous about Luo Qingchen. But why was he nervous about her? Could it be, no matter where I go, it's my own business? Su Chen's deep eyes revealed a faint light. He looked at Lan Ting in front of him and said, "It has nothing to do with you." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and continued walking forward. Lan Ting bit her lips and shouted angrily, "Yes, it has nothing to do with me. But Su Chen, are you going to save the beauty? Let me tell you, this will only make her more infatuated with you. This way, you won't be able to get rid of her." Lan Ting was very smart. She used another point to cut into Su Chen's heart. She used the result to persuade him to think twice. I already let her down. If I let her get hurt because of me, then I'm worse than a pig or a dog. After Su Chen said this, he ran forward without looking back. He used an absolutely reasonable reason to fool himself and kept telling himself that he just felt sorry for her. Under such a premise, he couldn't let her get hurt. And she was no longer that young girl who could get hurt. Cherry blossoms fluttered and fell. She held a feather umbrella in her hand and stood under the red sunset, knocking down the people in front of her one by one. The initial waves of sighs turned into cheers in the end. Of course, Wang Bing didn't expect that he and his followers would be defeated by a girl even though there were so many of them. Originally, they wanted to show off their power one by one, but they didn't expect that no matter who it was, they would be beaten to the ground in less than 5 seconds by Luo Qingchen. Later on, they didn't care about their pride and gritted their teeth to attack together. Unexpectedly, the result was still the same. They were all knocked down to the ground by Luo Qingchen in less than 10 seconds. What was going on? How did this little girl become so powerful? With so many people looking at him, and so many phones taking pictures of him, it would be too embarrassing if he left with his tail between his legs. King. In the next second, Wang Bing took out a small knife from his pocket and said, I'll fight it out with you. In a flash, Wang Bing picked up the knife and stabbed in Luo Qingchen's direction. Chapter 2804. Although this extreme couldn't create any waves in Luo Qingchen's heart at all, she quickly grabbed Wang Bing's wrist and twisted it forcefully. The sharp knife directly cut the back of her hand. With a thud, the knife fell to the ground. A breeze blew past, and cherry blossoms fell. She held up the umbrella like a beam of light, and no one could block out her sharpness. And Su Chen happened to see this scene. It was so dazzling that he could not look straight at it. Probably no one could understand his feelings at this moment. Perhaps even he himself did not understand. How is it possible? Lan Ting looked at the scene in front of her in disbelief. Her eyes widened and her lips could not close. How was it possible? This was too unbelievable. Even if Luo Qingchen practiced martial arts like Taekwondo, she was facing so many people alone. How could she beat them down so easily and not be injured at all? Luo Qingchen gently patted the cherry blossoms that fell on her shoulder. Everyone who wanted to beat her up fell to the ground. She thought that today's matter was over. Unexpectedly, it was at this moment that Gu Zhu stood up. Why are you all so happy? Are we aristocrats going to be bullied by an ordinary student in the future? Gu Zhu's voice was still very sharp. Standing in the crowd, she glared at Luo Qingchen fiercely. She used a harsh tone to sow discord between Luo Qingchen and the aristocrats. She got people to beat up Luo Qingchen because she wanted her to be beaten black and blue, not because she wanted her to shine. Although Gu Zhu was not very popular with girls, she was quite popular with boys. A few boys began to chime in, and the words they said were very unpleasant. Please, what's there to be proud of? Do you really think you're the savior of the ordinary students? That's right. Bullying our Queen Zhu. Did water get into your brain? I'll kill you. In an instant, a golden brick flew in their direction. Luo Qingchen narrowed her cold eyes and opened the umbrella with her right hand. The brick fell to the ground with a dong sound, accompanied by white feathers. The one who threw the brick at her was a boy with glasses. He had a crew cut, carried a green school bag, and wore a green hat. The memories in his mind began to intertwine. This person's figure had also appeared in the world of the original owner. If she remembered correctly, he was the one who had hit the original owner with a brick and killed Fat Tiger. Murderer? Do you want to be a murderer again? Luo Qingchen put down the umbrella. Her clear eyes flashed with a touch of darkness, and in this darkness, there was a killing intent that ordinary people couldn't see. The bespectacled boy seemed to feel Luo Qingchen's gaze. He squatted down, picked up another brick, and threw it in his direction. His mouth was still muttering, "Trash, go to hell." Logically speaking, if this wasn't modern society, Luo Qingchen would probably really kill him. Whether it was a parallel world or not, killing someone meant paying with their life. In an instant, when Su Chen was about to charge forward, she was suddenly hugged by Lan Ting. Luo Qingchen wanted to dodge the brick, but she never thought that someone would open her umbrella. In front of everyone, that person stood by her side. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 10%. Chapter 2805. Luo Qingchen was stunned for a moment. The moment she looked up, she saw an unforgettable scene. The light from the setting sun shone on his fair and handsome face. He was wearing a white shirt with a pointed collar. He didn't follow the school's rules and didn't wear a tie. The first 3 buttons in front of his chest weren't buttoned up, revealing his collarbone. There was a white diamond pin on the collar of the shirt. The diamond-shaped cut of the white diamond was shining brightly. Cherry blossoms fell gently, mixing with the white feathers on the umbrella. It was a beautiful scene. She suddenly felt a little nervous. This was the first time she saw Mu Lichuan. Even in the memory of the original owner, this person who was feared by everyone in school had only appeared a few times. If nothing had happened to the original owner this afternoon, Mu Lichuan would have returned from his inspection in the evening. Hiss! Everyone sucked in cold air. That was Mu Lichuan they were talking about. He was definitely the most handsome man in the Royal Academy. Luo Qingchen took the umbrella over. The moment their eyes met, she saw his face more clearly. He had short flaxen hair and deep eyes. He was unruly, but he didn't lose the quality of being the descendant of a big family. He had a faint smile on his face, and his entire body was emitting an aura that prevented people from getting close to him. However, this aura didn't seem to apply to her. At that moment, Wang Bing and the others' legs immediately turned to jelly. It was normal for them to bully Luo Qingchen, but Mu Lichuan wasn't someone they could afford to offend. Gu Zhu bit her lip. Although she was still unwilling, she didn't dare to say anything. Lan Ting and Su Chen were still standing nearby. Both of them had a complicated look in their eyes. The sudden appearance of this young man seemed to have broken the balance between the two of them. However, to Luo Qingchen, he was the main character of this world. He was shining brightly. The discussions of the surrounding crowd gradually reached her ears. They were all words of surprise, doubt, puzzlement, and even jealousy and anger. Oh my God! Young Master Li! Why is he helping Luo Qingchen? Ah! I'm so jealous. The school hunk is a hero saving the damsel in distress. What nonsense are you talking about? Young Master Li just happened to pass by. It's impossible for him to know Luo Qingchen. I agree. If he knew her, how could young Master Li not know about her relationship with Professor Su Chen? Right. He must have pitied her, so he helped her. Young Master Li is so handsome. Why were all these gossips trying to belittle her and elevate Mu Lichuan? This kind of feeling was quite uncomfortable, okay? For the sake of your identity as the successor, I will leave first. He lowered his eyes and chuckled, a faint light flashing in his eyes. Ahem. Luo Qingchen cleared her throat and spat out 2 words from between her teeth. I won't see you off. With Mu Lichuan's appearance, even if he didn't say anything, no one dared to touch Luo Qingchen today. The bespectacled boy with the brick was long gone. Wang Bing smiled awkwardly at her and then fled in a hurry. Fat Tiger was already lying on the ground in fear. His chubby hands were still trembling. The crowd slowly dispersed, leaving behind a field of white feathers and cherry blossoms. Chapter 2806. Luo Qingchen helped Fat Tiger up from the ground, patted the dust off her body and said, "Let's go. I'll take you to eat something delicious." Qingchen, we're still alive, right? Her voice trembled, and the image of Wang Bing picking up the small brick and the man with the crew cut picking up the brick appeared in her mind. For a moment she almost thought that she was going to die here today. Fortunately, none of the tragedies happened. Fortunately, it was just a scare without any danger. Don't worry, we're still alive. Luo Qingchen patted her back gently and continued to walk in the direction of the parking lot. She knew that Su Chen and Lan Ting were still standing not far away, but she didn't even look at them from the corner of her eyes. Some people were destined to never be able to stir up any storms in her life. They would never be able to do so. The last light of the setting sun slowly dissipated, and the street lights on both sides of the campus lit up on time. Su Chen looked at Luo Qingchen's back for a long time, but he didn't call out her name. He was the same as before, no. He was even more confused than before. Because he didn't know what he wanted, but he knew very well that he didn't like this feeling. He didn't like it very much. Su Chen, did you want to save her just now? Lan Ting bit her lips and carefully opened her mouth. Her heart felt like it was being pressed by 1,000 pounds of stone, and she couldn't breathe. Lan Ting. Su Chen clenched his fists and growled, "She's my student, shouldn't I save her? Do you know how despicable your actions were?" She took a deep breath, and her eyes were filled with tears. She bit her lips and said, "Did you save her because she's your student, or because she's your ex-girlfriend? Su Chen, are you worthy of Qingyu?" Whenever she felt that she couldn't suppress Su Chen, she always liked to bring out in Qingyu. The 3 words that she used to hate the most had now become a sharp weapon in her hand. "Do you know how kind Qingyu is?" Su Chen sneered. "She's the kind of person who would tell her parents that if she were to die one day, her organs would be unconditionally donated to those in need." He loved Qingyu, loved her smile, loved her kindness. She was different from those girls who liked to laze around at home or go shopping on weekend. In her free time, she would either go to the welfare center or the orphanage. She wanted to do more things that she could. Unfortunately, none of these girls had a good ending. "Why are you talking about it?" Lan Ting pursed her lips and said, "What I'm saying is, do you have other people in your heart besides Qingyu?" She had probed him again and again because she wanted to know the answer. She wanted Su Chen to tell her decisively that after so many years, he still only loved Qingyu. At the very least, she only needed to compare herself to a dead person. At the very least, she felt that she still had a chance. "Humph," Su Chen sneered. "Maybe I only have Qingyu in my heart, or maybe there's someone else. But there's definitely no you." "You." Lan Ting looked at his cold and resolute eyes, and her face turned pale. Such cruel and heartless words. Chapter 2807. Back in the dormitory, Luo Qingchen received a text message from the Dean of the Academic Affairs Office after taking a shower. The notice of the transfer had been approved. She could go to the Academic Affairs Office tomorrow morning to receive the relevant items after the transfer. Luo Qingchen glanced at the time. It was already 9 o'clock in the evening. She planned to go to bed after drying her hair. But she didn't expect that Fat Tiger would receive a phone call that directly made her lose the time to sleep. Qingchen, what should I do? My brother was detained in the Muse bar." Fat Tiger was very anxious, his face alternating between blue and white. Her psychological quality was particularly bad. Coupled with the rough and loud voice of the person on the phone just now, she was probably frightened. Muse. Luo Qingchen's eyebrows slightly wrinkled. It was the most famous high-end bar in a city. Although she had never been there, she knew a lot about the aristocratic circle. Muse bar's turnover every night was more than 1 million. There were many rich second generations who went to the bar to drink or pick up girls. Moreover, Muse was actually one of the businesses under the name of the Luo family. It seemed to be the original owner's mother. Her mother opened the bar on a whim after tasting wine from all over the world. Originally, it was only used to store her own wine. She didn't expect that it would eventually become one of the landmarks of a city, a place for rich people to squander. The chubby girl was just an ordinary student. How could her brother go to a place like Muse? Why would your brother go to a place like Muse? Luo Qingchen blew her hair twice and changed her clothes directly. Is he your biological brother? Yes. He's my biological brother. Fat Tiger's tears fell as he put on his clothes. He choked with sobs. My brother is very good to me. Our family's condition is not good. In order to let me go to school, my brother dropped out of school very early to work. You mean he doesn't go to Muse to spend money, but works in Muse? Luo Qingchen put the phone in her pocket and asked, What did those people say on the phone just now? Although they shouted loudly, she couldn't hear it very clearly through the phone. It seems like they want me to take out money. But where do I get the money? Fat Tiger held the bank card in his hand and said, Even if I add the pocket money from the past few months, it's only 2,000 yuan. Luo Qingchen frowned slightly, and a dim light flashed through her eyes. In fact, in the original owner's memory, Fat Tiger was a very frugal girl. Other than the money she had to spend in class, she basically didn't spend a penny. Every day when she went to the cafeteria for lunch, she would look at the braised pork for a long time, but in the end, she couldn't bear to order a small portion. But taking a step back, the money paid by the class was quite generous. Every month, the class fee would start at 500 renminbi. The few girls with Guzhu as the core would always buy a lot of drinks and snacks and put them in the small fridge at the back of the class. However, ordinary people like them didn't even have the qualifications to touch the fridge, let alone have a drink or a snack. But if they didn't pay this class fee, who knew how Guzhu's group would treat them? Therefore, Fat Tiger didn't spend much money on himself every month, but he wasted a lot of money on class fees. Don't worry, I have the money. Luo Qingchen took the dorm key and said, Let's go and see what's the situation. If we really have to pay, then we'll pay. If someone is looking for trouble, then it's a different story. That place. Is it far from here? Chapter 2808. Ever since Muse became a landmark in City A, many small bars opened up around Muse, and their business was quite good. The street's name was changed from Northwest Street to an elegant and artistic name, Moonlight Street. The moonlight was gentle and intoxicating. Young lady, it's so late at night. Be careful. The driver was a middle-aged man. He reminded them as he turned on the meter. Yes, it's fine. Luo Qingchen chuckled and said, We're going to pick up a friend. As soon as the car turned into Moonlight Street, the bright lights shone into her eyes, and the air was filled with the fragrance of alcohol. It was as if she would get drunk if she took a few more breaths. It smelled pretty good. The driver stopped about 50 meters in front of Muse and said to them, Cars of our caliber can only be parked here. You can't park in front of Muse. The cars that can park there are all luxury cars that cost millions. Yes, thank you, sir. Luo Qingchen scanned the QR code and paid the driver, then pulled Fat Tiger out of the car. She lowered her head, still afraid. Her hand was tightly clutching the 2,000 yuan bank card that she had been saving. Do you trust me? Luo Qingchen patted her head gently like a big sister and comforted her. Based on how I fought against 10 people at school today, I should be able to gain your trust. Fat Tiger slowly raised his head. The colorful lights shone on Luo Qingchen's side profile. Her face was fair, her eyes were bright, and her hair was messy. She was so beautiful that she seemed to be glowing. Fat Tiger felt as if he was under a spell. He could only nod his head and say, I trust you. I trust you. Luo Qingchen gave a shrug and walked in the direction of Muse with a chuckle. All of a sudden, she felt that her time in this world wasn't too bad after all. At least she could save Fat Tiger and meet Mu Lichuan the moment she arrived. At the same time, a Nissan sedan stopped not too far away. The person sitting in the car was none other than Su Chun. Ever since he left school, he couldn't calm down for a long time. Anxiety, uneasiness, frustration, unwillingness again and again, all the negative emotions surged into his heart on this day. No matter what he did, he couldn't digest them all. Therefore, after dinner, he decided to go to the small bar on Moonlight Street for a drink or two. He didn't expect to meet Luo Qingchen here. What was she doing here? Su Chen narrowed his eyes and fixed his gaze on the girl across the street. She shouldn't like coming to this kind of place. Could it be that his cold actions today had hurt her? Why was it that even though he had resolutely told himself to part on good terms, in the end, the one who couldn't let go wasn't her, but himself? Su Chun closed her eyes, parked the car by the roadside, and walked forward. Cars worth less than 5 million yuan could not be parked within 50 meters of Muse Bar. Although he did not frequent Moonlight Street, he still knew this. He walked across from her and watched her stop at Muse's door. Su Chen was slightly shocked. If she wanted to drink because she was in a bad mood, why would she go to Muse? Moreover, the girl behind her was her roommate. 2 girls going to Muse so late at night was really worrying. Chapter 2809. The attitude of the security guard was very bad, especially the feeling of looking down on people. Ku. Luo Qingchun cleared her throat and said, "We were told to come. Did something happen to a waiter just now?" Although her words seemed to be a very ordinary inquiry, it actually contained a lot of information. At present, they didn't know what happened to Fat Tiger's brother. It was always good to get some information. Oh, the security guard looked at them up and down again and said, "I'm afraid you really can't save Littlely. The person he offended tonight is not an ordinary person. Go in, maybe you can see him for the last time." Fat Tiger's face became paler when he heard this sentence. Luo Qingchen hurriedly patted the back of her hand and whispered, "It's okay. At least it proves that your brother's current situation is not in danger for the time being. Since the other party called the chubby girl to ask for money, at least the money came first and the life came later." Muse Bar was not the same as an ordinary bar. It occupied an area of 50 meters in front and behind. Except for the hall that was similar to other bars, the rest of the place felt like a train. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple, each private room had different colors. It felt like a train carriage. As soon as Luo Qingchen and Fat Tiger walked into the bar, they saw a group of people gathered in a certain place. "Let's go and see." As soon as her voice fell, Fat Tiger roared, "Brother!" Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes and looked at the teenager who was kneeling on the ground and being forced to drink. Standing in front of him was a fat man with big ears and a familiar figure. Guju. She wasn't used to a college student coming to this kind of place. Moreover, Guju was originally a young lady from a rich family. However, her dress was completely different from her appearance at school during the day. Guju seemed to have heard Fat Tiger's voice and raised her eyes slightly. There was a little surprise in her eyes at first, then there was a touch of pride in her eyes like a queen. God was really good to her. The humiliation she suffered in the evening gave her a chance to retaliate in a bar in the middle of the night. Oh, it's really a narrow road for enemies. Guju applied a layer of dark lipstick. Her right hand habitually picked up a slender lady's cigarette on the table and took a deep puff. "This is your brother?" She finally looked at Fat Tiger. Looking at his pale face, she felt an inexplicable sense of joy. "Little fatty, go back quickly. This is not a place where you can come." Before Li Hui could finish his sentence, his hair was grabbed by the fat man in front of him. He showed his big golden teeth and smoked a big cigarette. He looked at him and said in a choked voice, "Shut the F***ck up? You're only fit to drink under my crotch." Boorish people's words were so unbearable that it made people feel nauseous. Luo Qingchen slightly knit her brows and softly said, "What did this waiter do that he needs to apologize to you like this? Little girl, do you know who you're talking to?" The big golden teeth fiercely looked at Luo Qingchen and said, "If you have the ability, say another word for me." "If I really say another word, I'm afraid I'll be finished here tonight." Luo Qingchen's cold eyes suddenly looked up with a touch of murderous intent. The big golden teeth froze for a moment. It was as if he was intimidated by the murderous intent in the air. Chapter 2810. In the blink of an eye, Luo Qingchen turned sideways at lightning speed. She casually picked up the beer bottle on the table with her right hand and slammed it on the edge of the table. The glass shattered into pieces, making a crisp sound of zzzzz. She was so fast that the men and women who were watching could not even see how she picked up the beer bottle and went to the gold-toothed man's side. When they came back to their senses, half of the beer bottle was already on the gold-toothed man's neck. The girl's gaze was calm and there was a cold smile at the corner of her lips. The cold beer bottle was emitting a 7-colored light, making it look so sharp. "You're right. The lives and dignity of ordinary people like us are worthless in your eyes." Luo Qingchen smirked and shrugged fearlessly. "Since we're going to die anyway, why don't we save our dignity and perish together with you?" The gold-toothed man, who was in high spirits earlier, felt his legs turn to jelly. However, the sharp beer bottle was already on his neck. If he lost his balance, his artery would be pierced. Hiss! The crowd gasped and looked at Luo Qingchen in disbelief. The gold-toothed man was a frequent customer of Muse. He was violent, unreasonable, rude, and lecherous. He had bullied many people because he was rich. Who would have thought that he would be defeated by a little girl today? What are you trying to do?" Grandpa Jean gulped nervously. He tried to calm down but realized that he could not. This seemingly ordinary little girl was right. Her life was worthless. If she was impulsive, she might really perish together with him. He was rich, powerful, and beautiful. He would never perish together with such a lowly life. "I'll ask nicely and you'll answer nicely." Luo Qingchen's voice was neither loud nor soft, but it was extremely cold. You tell me. Big Teeth Jean felt the sharp beer bottle scratching the surface of his skin. Sticky blood oozed out slowly. "This little girl, don't even think about going home in one piece tonight." Although Big Teeth Jean thought so, he could only compromise on the surface. "What's the grudge between you and this waiter named Shaoli?" Luo Qingchen raised her eyebrows slightly. She pursed her lips and said softly, "I'm an impulsive person. I advise you to tell the truth." Luo Qingchen. Before the gold-toothed man could answer, Gu Zhu called her name. She did not look good. Obviously, she thought that she would be able to mock Luo Qingchen tonight. Of her eye. She did not expect that before the show in her mind's eye. "If you have something to say, just say it. I don't want to talk to you." She looked up arrogantly with a cold light in her eyes. Liking a person might not mean liking each other, but hating a person definitely meant hating each other. There were many ways to hate a person, but she liked the most direct way. "This waiter spilled cocktail on my dress. This dress is a limited edition from Paris, it costs 6 figures for one, so don't you think he should pay for it?" Gu Zhu tightly gritted her teeth as she looked at Luo Qingchen. "What? So you can sell your poverty just because you're poor? Do you think you can just say no money when you do something wrong?" Gu Zhu's words were sonorous and powerful. She sounded like she was standing on the moral high ground. Chapter 28:11. "You said he dirtied your dress?" Luo Qingchen looked down at Li Hui and asked, "Is that true?" "No, cough cough cough." Li Hui's face was pale, probably because he had been forced to drink too much alcohol. But he still tried to explain himself. "I was delivering something to the young master of the Blue Water Room. She suddenly backed away and bumped into me. A little waiter dares to question me?" Gu Zhu roared. "I can buy 10 of my dresses a month, but you can't afford one in your lifetime. Why would a person of my status make things difficult for a poor person?" Gu Zhu was amazing. As expected of the big sister of the class, she used the so-called rich-poor theory to explain the situation. The rich wouldn't steal from the poor, but if the poor had something from the rich, it must have been stolen. She didn't expect to see this kind of 16th-century European noble slave act so blatantly in front of her. After Gu Zhu said this, there were all kinds of comments around her. "I think the girl in black is right. Poor people's things are dirty. If they didn't bump into me, I would feel disgusted just walking past them." "That's right. If the girl in black bumped into them herself, she wouldn't accuse someone over a dress. I don't think it's necessary." Anyway, it's obvious that the waiter was negligent. Since he can't afford to pay, he can only pay that. Although most of the comments were unpleasant, there were one or two that were pleasing to the ear. You can't say that. People who come here are either rich or respectable. There's no need to feel superior. You can't be so sure about anything. If Muse could release the camera, we would know the truth. Unfortunately, our status is limited. We don't have the right to make Muse release the camera. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes before looking at Gu Zhu. Her lips curled into a smile of deep meaning as she said, "Then even if what you say is true, what do you have?" Before she could finish the word, evidence, Li Hui interrupted her. "Classmate." Even though Li Hui was still under the control of the gold-toothed man's men, he still used all his strength to say, "She's not telling the truth. Don't compensate her." Dirtying other people's things and not paying for it is indeed something that poor people like you would do. Gu Zhu looked down at them like an absolute queen. Her red lips curled up as she said, "Lowly people. I heard that there's something interesting here, so I came over to take a look." In the next second, a lazy and cold voice slowly sounded from the crowd not far away. There were already a lot of onlookers. At least half of the people in Muse Bar were there. But when this voice rang out, everyone around him made way for him. He was dressed in a dark purple suit with a gorgeous 8-pointed star badge on his chest. He looked very noble. Her chestnut hair looked so beautiful under the warm light of the bar. Young Master Li. The security guards around him called out his name at the same time. In Muse, or even in the entire business circle, no one dared to offend the Mu family, much less Mu Lichuan. Every man wanted to have a drink with him, and every woman wanted to brush shoulders with him. Young Master Li. Gu Zhu suddenly remembered what happened in school this evening. Mu Lichuan helped Luo Qingchen, but she didn't know why he helped her. Chapter 28:12. Young Master Li. Gu Zhu bit her lip as she looked at Mu Lichuan. "Although we're not friends, I admire you. Why would someone of my status deliberately make things difficult for a waiter?" "Okay." Mu Lichuan sat down on the sofa and elegantly picked up the cocktail the bartender handed to him. "I believe you." At that moment, Luo Qingchen felt like there was a buzz in her head. Could it be that Mu Lichuan wasn't here to help her, but to help Gu Zhu? That was impossible. According to Gu Zhu's words, she wasn't close to Mu Lichuan. Taking a step back, this meant that he didn't have much of an impression of Gu Zhu. As for her, as his childhood sweetheart, as the one who had 10% of his affection for her, she suddenly couldn't understand Mu Lichuan. It was as if under that gentlemanly and elegant appearance, there was a devil's heart. Perhaps it was because of Mu Lichuan's words. Those who wanted to stand on Gu Zhu's side earlier on were emboldened. After all, since young Master Li of the Mu family had spoken, they could do whatever they wanted. See? The poor will always be poor. There are so many shameless people in this world. That's right. If you know that you're broke, then don't come to Muse to be a waiter. Don't you know that people like us are filthy when they touch us? Why don't you move bricks? Why do you have to come to Muse to be an eyesore? The construction site is more suitable for you. This time, other than these unbearable words, there were no other opposing voices. Mu Lichuan was indeed Mu Lichuan. No one here dared to disrespect him. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes and looked at Gu Zhu from the corner of her eyes. She had a victorious smile on her face with heavy makeup. It was a kind of pride that came from the bottom of her heart. It really made people want to give her too tight slap. This was the first time she felt that Mu Lichuan wasn't cute at all. No wonder the original owner didn't like him even though they were childhood sweethearts. Instead, she fell for that scumbag Su Chun. She wasn't cute in the first place. Who would like her? Everyone would want to please her. Young Master Li, you're really an understanding person. Gu Zhu pursed her lips and chuckled. Some things can only be understood by people from the same world. Low-class people won't understand. I don't care about this dress at all, but if you can't afford it, don't make up lies. Gu Zhu felt as if she was flying into the sky, as if she was sitting on a space cotton ship. She felt her whole body was soft and very happy. She always thought that with her status, it would be extremely difficult for her to get close to Mu Lichuan. She didn't expect that they would cross paths today. What if Mu Lichuan fell in love with her? Oh my God! Whenever she thought about it, she felt as if flowers were blooming in her heart. Those who know me know that I'm not a very understanding person. Mu Lichuan laughed coldly and asked, "How much is this dress?" Gu Zhu was stunned for a moment. She didn't quite understand what Mu Lichuan meant, but she still replied proudly, 160,000. The famous designer from Paris, Avril, yes. I'll pay for it on his behalf. Before Gu Zhu could finish her sentence, Mu Lichuan interrupted her. The handsome guy standing behind him immediately walked over and placed a stack of money on the glass table. Mu Lichuan narrowed his eyes and said with a faint smile, "You can take off the dress now." Once again, Luo Qingchen felt as if her head was buzzing. Chapter 28:13. Hiss, hiss, hiss. She heard a series of gasps. The bar, which was originally noisy, became exceptionally quiet at this moment. No one dared to say a word. Even those who were particularly loud earlier quietly retreated to the back of the crowd, afraid that they would be implicated. At this moment, she looked at Gu Zhu's face. Her initially proud and excited face had turned extremely pale at this moment. This moment was probably the most shocking moment in her life. Her head was probably no longer buzzing. Instead, it had indirectly stopped working. She was panting heavily and tears were about to fall from her eyes. The man standing in front of her was Mu Lichuan. No one could defy Mu Lichuan. Why did this happen? Why did he pay for them? Why did he ask her to take off her dress in front of everyone? What did she say wrong? Why didn't Mu Lichuan believe her? She thought that she was standing at the highest point of morality and had spoken clearly, but she didn't expect that "you've already paid. Leave the dress and you can leave." Mu Lichuan's voice was slightly cold, and there was an unknown light in his eyes. He didn't care what the truth was. However, the truth had yet to be decided and the public opinion was one-sided. He didn't like this feeling. Moreover, although Luo Qingchen hadn't received the inheritance, she was still the only daughter of the Luo family. She was even half the owner of Muse. He knew her identity, so it was natural for him to help her. However, when he saw her big and clear eyes looking at him, he felt an inexplicable sense of satisfaction. This kind of satisfaction was rare for someone like him who could have anything. I don't want him to pay for my dress." Gu Zhu gritted her teeth and looked at everyone in front of her with reddened eyes. Finally, her gaze fell on Luo Qingchen. This was the first time she hated an ordinary student so much. In the past, she had always bullied her in class. However, every time she wanted to bully her, she would retaliate. This feeling was too frustrating. Mu Lichuan replied coldly. Then, he smirked and said, "Then you can leave too. Don't ruin everyone's mood." Mu Lichuan's voice was neither loud nor soft, but it was extremely cold. When the onlookers heard this, they started to chime in, "Hurry up and leave. Otherwise, you'll embarrass yourself here. We haven't even investigated the matter and you're asking her to pay for it? She's a diligent waitress. What did she do wrong?" "Exactly. She even said that the dress cost $160,000. Who knows if it's a pirated dress?" Hearing all these comments, Luo Qingchen couldn't help but laugh. It was such a sudden turn of events that they were able to flatter Mu Lichuan so naturally. Gu Zhu wiped the tears off her face and walked out of Muse in her 10 centimeters high heels. The humiliation she suffered in front of Luo Qingchen today, she would definitely make her pay the price. After Gu Zhu left, Luo Qingchen gave a shrug. She put down the beer bottle and walked over to help Li Hui up. Chapter 28:14. What do you think, little girl? Mu Lichuan suddenly looked at her and changed his tone. It seemed like he was asking for her opinion. Luo Qingchen was stunned for a moment, then she cleared her throat and said, "I think your teeth look good. Li Hui's injuries can be compensated with your teeth." In the next second, the gold-toothed man removed his golden tooth without a word. There were still green leaves and black stains on his tooth. He wiped the gold-toothed man and looked at Mu Lichuan. "Young Master Li, what do you think? Little girl, what do you think?" Mu Lichuan once again gave Luo Qingchen the authority. She didn't know why, but she felt that other than giving her the authority, there was also a hint of affection in his tone. 10% favorability, this was probably her misconception. "All right. That's it," Luo Qingchen said to the fat tiger on the side. "Help your big brother out and wait for me outside." "Qingchen, Fat Tiger had a complicated expression on his face. He was touched and panicked at the same time. "Go ahead." Luo Qingchen knew that with her mental state, she would definitely be frightened. It was better to let her go out in this situation. "Thank you." When Li Hui brushed past her, although he couldn't even stand properly, he still thanked her politely. Luo Qingchen nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. Tonight's pub storm had come to an end. The onlookers had mostly left after Gu Zhu and the gold-toothed man left. After all, although everyone wanted to walk past Mu Lichuan, it didn't mean that they had the guts to do so. Luo Qingchen wanted to stay a little longer because she wanted to thank Mu Lichuan in person. However, she didn't expect that the moment she turned around, there would be a sweet-looking girl sitting next to the sofa. She had long, curly hair, a pink sweater, and a pair of shorts. From where she was standing, she looked like she wasn't wearing any pants. "If you don't come back, they'll think that you have a new girlfriend." The girl's voice was very soft, like cotton candy. With such a tone of voice, any boy would not be able to handle it. Mu Lichuan nodded slightly as he looked deeply at Luo Qingchen. She also looked at him. The two of them looked at each other, but did not speak. "Young Master Li." The girl seemed to be acting coquettishly, but there was no impatience in her voice. She probably didn't dare to be impatient. After all, this was Mu Lichuan and no one would dare to be impatient with him. Perhaps no one could see through him. "Okay," Mu Lichuan replied calmly. He then stood up and walked in the opposite direction of her. After taking 2 steps, he stopped. She didn't call out to him. 3 seconds later, he continued walking forward. The girl in the pink sweater turned around to look at her, and the light in her eyes seemed to have changed at this moment. It no longer looked innocent and harmless. Instead, there was a hint of sharpness in it. Luo Qingchen gave a sigh as she suddenly felt a large rise and fall in her heart. There was too little information in the original owner's memory, so she had no idea what kind of man he was. Elegant and cold, domineering and arrogant, or dangerous and mysterious. Qingchen, just as she was lost in her own thoughts, a familiar voice called her name. Chapter 28:15. Su Chen. It was Su Chen again. Back in the previous host's world, after Su Chen broke up with her, she wanted to meet him so badly, but they never did. Why did she keep bumping into Su Chen wherever she went? I didn't think that a professor from an elite school would come to a bar in the middle of the night. Luo Qingchen put her hands into her milk-white coat and looked at him calmly. "I really didn't expect this. I saw you coming in from next door, so I came in to take a look." Under the warm lighting, Su Chen's face looked even better. He was the kind of person who wouldn't be that stunning the first time you saw him, but after looking at him for a long time, you would find him more and more attractive. Back then, the original owner had felt the same way. She could read her admiration for Su Chen from her memories. Moreover, it was harder for her to extricate herself as time went on. A little what? Luo Qingchen raised the corner of her mouth and looked at Su Chen with a mocking smile. "Are you worried about your student, Professor Su?" Luo Qingchen admitted that she was filled with hostility towards Su Chen. Therefore, no matter what Su Chen's motive was for coming to Muse, whether he was concerned or just passing by to her, it didn't mean anything. Su Chen was stunned for a moment. There was a heavy feeling in her heart. It was an indescribable feeling. In the next second, he suppressed the turbulent emotions in his heart and looked at Luo Qingchen. It's too late. I'll send you to the hospital and then send you back to your dorm. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes. There was a sour feeling in her heart. Almost made her eyes turn red. These were the feelings that the previous host had left for this person. She probably really loved Su Chen. Even though these feelings were already dead, they were still buried in the depths of her heart. Although it was shallow, she could still feel it. Professor Su is too. Luo Qingchen paused as her clear eyes sparkled in the light of the wine. Isn't he meddling in other people's business? Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 20%. Mu Lichuan hadn't left yet? Mu Lichuan was listening to her? Damn. Did it have to be this exciting? This person wasn't elegant, cold, dangerous, and mysterious, right? He must be a black-bellied person. On the second floor, Mu Lichuan was sitting in the VIP seat in the orange water room. He was leaning against the sofa and could see Luo Qingchen's direction. His hearing was good. Although their conversation was not very loud, he could still hear it clearly. Young Masterly, the information has been checked and sent to your mailbox. The handsome bodyguard standing beside him bent down and explained the task he had assigned. Yes. He replied faintly and took a sip of the red wine on the table. His eyes, which were as deep as ink, glowed faintly. He was in a good mood, especially after he heard Luo Qingchen say that he was too nosy. It was as if a pool of clear water flowed into his heart, and he was suddenly enlightened. Young Masterly, do you know that girl? Bai Shui placed her hands in front of her chest. Her pink sweater was especially warm under the light. She had spent a lot of effort and connections to be able to stand by his side. He had told his good friend this evening that he liked pink and feathers. She had specially worn a pink sweater when she came to the bar at night. However, the limelight had been stolen by someone else tonight. His eyes seemed to be attracted to her as they kept moving towards her direction. Chapter 28:16. Mu Lichuan's voice was cold as he narrowed his eyes at her. Didn't young Master Hua tell you? Don't ask questions that you shouldn't. Bai Shui was stunned and quickly explained, That's not what I meant. I just mentioned it casually. That girl in black doesn't look like a good person. I'm just worried that she'll go back and cause trouble for that girl. She won't have the chance. Mu Lichuan narrowed his eyes. As he spoke, his gaze turned even colder. Bai Shui narrowed her eyes when she heard this and felt even more uncomfortable. If Mu Lichuan could say something like this, it was enough to prove that he knew that girl and was trying to help her. In order to defeat the girl by Mu Lichuan's side, she tried her best to find out what he liked, what he hated, and what he couldn't touch. In fact, there were so many girls around her, including herself, but they weren't even considered as girlfriends. It was just that everyone knew that there would be a girl by Mu Lichuan's side every once in a while. That girl would be able to stand close to him and not be rejected by him. And this kind of girl kept changing again and again. He seemed to treat every girl by his side the same way. He wouldn't do anything else. However, as long as she could stand by his side, he would fulfill all of her requests. However, Bai Shui was more concerned about the admiring gazes of thousands of people. In this industry, which woman didn't want to know Mu Lichuan? And which woman didn't want to stand by his side? She loved the feeling of being envied, and stared at. Just like now, she was sitting in the orange water room with Mu Lichuan, surrounded by envious and jealous gazes. Even if Mu Lichuan wasn't looking at her, she still felt extremely proud. That's right. She loved vanity, and she loved the vanity who stood by Mu Lichuan's side. Young Masterly, do you have a lot of classes tomorrow? Bai Shui tried to find a topic. The weather forecast said that it's going to snow tomorrow. Why don't we go skiing? In the next second, Mu Lichuan narrowed his eyes and looked at the first floor with a cold gaze. Before Bai Shui could finish her sentence, he had already put down his wine glass and walked towards the first floor. This was because the man named Su Chun had reached out his hand and grabbed her wrist. It was an action that made him feel very uncomfortable. He could never tolerate himself having such a feeling. I said I would send you guys off today, so I will. His tone was the same as before when he was angry at her for doing something wrong. There was an unknown emotion in his reproach. This was an emotion that even he couldn't control. Luo Qingchen's gaze fell on his slender fingertips. Her eyes were as cold as frost. She said slowly, "Professor Su, please conduct yourself with dignity." As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her right hand and flung away his shackles. This was the first time they had confronted each other after coming here. Perhaps she didn't come to this place late, but just in time. "Qingchen, don't throw a tantrum." Su Chen frowned slightly. "You weren't like this in the past." "You used to, haha. In the past?" Luo Qingchen sneered, looked at his familiar eyes, and said word by word, "You are not qualified to talk to me about the past." Okay. We won't talk about it anymore." Su Chen saw that there were people around them, so he took a deep breath and said, "Your friend is waiting for you outside. Let's solve this problem first." "Then I don't need you," she replied almost instantly, without a trace of hesitation. "Qingchen, you." Chapter 28:17. The moment Mu Lichuan appeared, Luo Qingchen was secretly delighted. In Su Chen's heart, the original owner of this body had always been a spare tire. No matter how much the original owner of this body refused to admit it, she was still An Qingyu's spare tire. "She's my student. As her teacher, it's my duty to send her home." Su Chen's eyes were calm as he looked at Mu Lichuan. There was no fear or admiration in his eyes. "Professor, it's the 21st century now. This girl is no longer a high school student. She's already an adult." Mu Lichuan put his hands in his pockets and looked at him lazily. "Her parents aren't worried about her coming out to play alone." "Professor, aren't you being a little too nosy?" Hearing this, Su Chen narrowed his eyes. He was speechless. He was no longer her boyfriend. He couldn't control her or protect her like he used to. In such a complicated place, the Luo Qingchen of the past would definitely hold his wrist and hide behind him carefully. But now, other than his identity as a professor, he didn't know what else he could use to control her. "Student, you're just passing by. You don't even know who her parents are. How do you know that her parents won't be worried about her?" Although Su Chen felt that his words were far-fetched, it did make sense. Whether it was in the United States or in China, he had never met Luo Qingchen's parents even though he had been with her for so long. Perhaps it was because her parents were busy with their lives, or perhaps her parents were no longer in this world. He had asked her about her parents before, but she didn't seem to want to talk about it, so he didn't ask further. However, Mu Lichuan was able to mention it so casually. It gave her the feeling that he knew her parents. Both of us know whether her parents are worried about her or not. In the next second, Mu Lichuan's right hand wrapped around her shoulder. He narrowed his eyes and smiled at Su Chen. "Professor, you don't have to come all the way here. I don't want the little girl and your jealous student to be unhappy." Luo Qingchen was stunned. Suddenly, she was brought into a warm embrace. She never thought that Mu Lichuan would say something like this. It seemed like he had a clear understanding of the relationship between a man and a woman. But why were there still so many women around him even though he had seen everything so clearly? Su Chen looked at the two people in front of her being so intimate. She stood there, speechless. When he came back to his senses, he was already looking at Luo Qingchen and Mu Lichuan's back. Suddenly, there was a feeling of weakness all over his body. It was as if his heart was beating very fast and his breathing had become rapid. Under everyone's gaze, Mu Lichuan brought Luo Qingchen out of muse. At the same time, Bai Shui chased after them and shouted, "Young Master Li, do you need my help?" She knew that he was right to his hearts. He didn't like a spoiled bratty girl. Therefore, no matter how much she hated Luo Qingchen at this moment, she had to pretend to be innocent. This was the only way Mu Lichuan could feel how special she was and how good she was. However, there were some people who Luo Qingchen could tell what kind of person they were with just one look. Perhaps she shouldn't be called a white lotus. She could only be called a little pretentious. At the very least, the things she said and did should be very different from what she thought in her heart. Chapter 28:18. Bai Shui was stunned by his coldness. She felt an inexplicable sense of fear. It was as if she stepped back, she wouldn't be able to stand beside Mu Lichuan anymore. Bai Shui gritted her teeth and looked at Mu Lichuan. Be careful on the road. Call me if anything happens, okay? Perhaps it was because Bai Shui was different from the other girls around him, but he didn't turn around and leave. Instead, he replied calmly, okay. Actually, Luo Qingchen didn't think that there was anything wrong with this okay. After all, one shouldn't hit a smiling person. You didn't come back for so long. I thought something happened. Fat Tiger bit his lip. He still didn't look well. However, compared to the frightened Fat Tiger, Li Hui's condition was worse. Luo Qingchen reached out and pressed on a few of his wounds. There were signs of slight fractures. Moreover, there were many small and big glass wounds on his body. If they weren't treated in time, it would be easy for him to get infected. Don't worry, I'm fine. Luo Qingchen shook her head and said, let's go to the hospital first. By the time Mu Lichuan sent them to the hospital, it was already 2 in the morning. Li Hui's injuries weren't light. In fact, there was a glass wound that was 3 centimeters away from the artery on his inner thigh. It was very dangerous. When Fat Tiger went to sign the papers, Luo Qingchen remembered her name. Li Xiu. There was a sense of elegance between the lines. It was completely different from her nickname. I'll call you Little Xiu Xiu from now on, Luo Qingchen chuckled and joked. It's such a nice name. Don't let it cover you up. Wah woo 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 woo. Luo Qingchen was stunned before she could react. Fat Tiger. Li Xiu directly kneeled down on the ground. Qingchen. Qingchen. Wah wah wah. Did people cry so easily these days? Cough cough. Luo Qingchen quickly cleared her throat. In order to avoid being surrounded in the hospital, she quickly helped her up and said, don't cry, don't cry. If you have something to say, just say it. You'll get fatter when you cry. Li Xiu was speechless. Little did she know that Li Xiu was crying even louder. Luo Qingchen thought about it carefully and felt that her way of comforting him was not quite right. She hurriedly said, she's not fat, she's not fat. Our little chubby girl is not fat at all. Li Xiu's face was filled with tears. She felt like she was about to suffocate. Luo Qingchen felt that it was better for her not to speak. After a long time, she tremblingly wiped away her tears, looked at her and said, thank you, really, really thank you. From childhood to adulthood, except for her relatives, no one treated her as well as Luo Qingchen. She was like a god, her whole body emitting a dazzling light, suddenly intruding into her life. No matter what kind of trouble she encountered, she would always be by her side to protect her. This time he even saved her brother. It's okay, you've helped me before, Luo Qingchen shrugged and chuckled. Go see your brother first, I'll wait for you outside. Since she had never experienced those things in the parallel universe, she did not want to experience them. Luo Qingchen turned around and saw Mu Lichuan, who was not far away, holding his laptop. She did not know what he was looking for, but he seemed to be very focused. She walked forward and took a peek at the laptop. Mu Lichuan slammed the laptop shut with a loud thud. Cough, cough. Luo Qingchen blinked and changed the topic. Thank you for today. I'll treat you to a meal next time. Are you sure you can afford to treat me to a meal in 2 years? Mu Lichuan chuckled with a lazy look in his eyes. Chapter 28:19. I can still afford to eat. Luo Qingchen cleared her throat and said, I wonder if young Master Li is willing to accept this position. It's a little difficult. His gaze was faint and there was a faint smile on his lips. His gaze was like a diamond star, so beautiful that it would shine. After Li Hui's condition stabilized, Mu Lichuan sent Luo Qingchen and Li Xiu back to their dormitory. The sky was already starting to brighten, but Mu Lichuan didn't look tired at all. Luo Qingchen watched as his Maserati left the dormitory. The dim rear lights made her feel intoxicated in the night. However, this intoxication was broken by the sound of the system notification. Ding! Affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 30%. This Mu Lichuan always liked to silently increase her affection for him? This feeling was quite strange. He stepped on the accelerator and sped off at 120 kilometers per hour. The song Love is Like a Tide was playing in the car. The young man's chestnut-colored hair looked especially charming in the night. His lips curled up slightly, and there was an indescribable joy in his heart. The next morning, the incident at Muse Bar last night had already spread like wildfire. There were different versions of the rumors, and some of them even sounded exaggerated to her. Have you heard? There was a palace drama at Muse Bar last night. That ordinary student actually approached young Master Li. Of course I've heard. Didn't the campus newspaper publish it immediately? Did she really think that she had the right to stand by young Master Li's side just because he helped her once? Hey! Young Master Li's girlfriend now. Oh, I mean the girl next to young Master Li, isn't that Bai Shui? Has there been a change? Ah, Bai Shui is my goddess. She's a talented girl in the music department. Her cello skills are so good that I'm drunk. Don't mention Bai Shui. I heard that Gu Zhu lost her face yesterday. She's such a prideful person. I bet she hates that ordinary student to death. Speaking of which, what's that ordinary student's name again? I'm not sure. I think it's something Chin. From the moment she walked into the school, this kind of noisy gossip had been buzzing in her ears. It wasn't until the moment she walked to the photography department that everyone's discussion suddenly changed. F***CK. What the hell is that? Transferred to another faculty? TSK. She's really unscrupulous in order to get close to young Master Li. But logically speaking, if she doesn't seize the opportunity, she'd be stupid. There's nothing wrong with wanting to get close to young Master Li, but the problem is, can you take a look in the mirror? What right does this kind of girl have to get close to young Master Li? Luo Qingchen squinted her eyes and looked indifferent. She didn't care at all. Just as she was about to find a seat, a girl in a light blue fur coat waved at her and said, "Student, there's an empty seat here." In the next second, Luo Qingchen's gaze fell on her. She was very delicate and wore light makeup. She looked different from many of the girls in the class. Luo Qingchen slightly knit her brows and walked in her direction. "Hi, I'm Lan Ji." The girl waved at her and said, "I heard my sister mention your name before." "Oh right, you probably don't know yet. My sister is Lan Ting." Probably because of their sister status, Luo Qingchen didn't have a good first impression of Lan Ji. Chapter 28:20. Actually, the people in our class aren't that gossipy. Lan Ji pursed her lips and said softly, "Besides, the class monitor also informed us that a transfer student would be coming. Everyone knows that it's you." Luo Qingchen had just sat down beside her when Lan Ji started to explain to her. She seemed to be a very cheerful girl. When she smiled, there were 2 faint dimples on her cheeks, and she was a little cute. Actually, Luo Qingchen did not want to have any enmity towards her. However, her name appeared on the bronze mirrors panel, and it was the position of the number 1 female supporting lead. Did that indirectly prove that there was a relationship between her and Mu Lichuan? Maybe it was in the past or now or in the future. "Thank you," Luo Qingchen replied faintly. "I don't really care." "Actually, it's normal to care." Lan Ji laughed softly and looked at her. After all, which girl doesn't care about what others think of them? Hey, Gigi is right. The moment Lan Ji finished speaking, a teenager with dyed green hair behind her patted her shoulder and said, "Although there are a few people in our class who are very gossipy, most people don't care about these messy things. We only care about how to take the most inspiring photos." The next second, Lan Ji rolled her eyes at him and said, "Your hair is very inspiring." Probably because Lan Ji was too direct, Luo Qingchen could not help but laugh. Everyone said that people who studied photography had a higher EQ of art, and the facts proved that it was true. "But there's something you might not know." Lan Ji blinked and said, "That, other than young Master Li in our class, it seems like you didn't have anything to do last night." A familiar voice sounded from the front. Bai Shui was wearing a snowflake-patterned sweater and her hair was combed into a princess hairstyle. Her skin was as fair as snow and she had pink lipstick on her lip. She did look like a porcelain doll. Lan Ji muttered softly, "Actually, she transferred to our class not long ago. She was originally from the vocal music department and transferred because of young Master Li," and Luo Qingchen replied, "I heard this morning that she used to be a vocal music student." Hey, the green-haired boy patted her shoulder again and said, I heard that the cello is really good, ah." Her beautiful voice shocked everyone. Lan Ji rolled her eyes at him. "Your voice is also very scary." PFFF. The conversation between the two of them was really too funny. It gave off a feeling of not being on a normal campus. Not this kind of deformed noble commoner. But you don't have to worry about it. Because of young Master Li, there are at least 10 people in our class who transferred here. There are more than 70 people in our photography department, which is the department with the most people in the whole school. Lan Ji started to nag in her ear about how popular Mu Lichuan was. Whenever he spoke to a girl, that girl would think of all sorts of ways to bump into him and fantasize about having a story with him. He was truly a heartthrob. With such a popular person, it was better for her to slowly get in touch with him. After all, the best plan was to slowly increase his liking for her and not become the target of public criticism. She shrunk her neck and planned to quietly pursue young Master Li. Bai Shui's expression darkened when she saw that Lan Ji did not respond. She wanted to say something, but Mu Lichuan's voice suddenly sounded from behind her. Cough, cough. He cleared his throat and walked around Bai Shui, his gaze landing lazily on Luo Qingchen. "You're too much. You're the closest to me in our class, but you didn't choose me as your deskmate. Do you not like me?" Chapter 28-21. At this moment, the entire class's eyes fell on her. Even Lan Ji, who was sitting beside her, was looking at her in disbelief. She wanted to say something, but stopped herself. Bai Shui bit her lips and stood there, her expression dark. However, she had to suppress her emotions and not let anyone see it. Mu Lichuan didn't seem to mind at all as he smiled and walked towards his seat. He sat in the leftmost row, by the window. The cool light shone on his chestnut-colored hair, making him look especially tranquil. For the entire morning, Luo Qingchen was in a daze. She only regained her senses when the teacher said that they were going to start preparing for the desert trip. The most famous department in the Royal Academy was the photography department, because the professors were very professional and had been to many places. The biggest difference between Mu Lichuan and the other young masters of wealthy families was that he was very talented in photography. Luo Qingchen had seen his camera before. Although the photos were different, every one of them made her eyes light up. "It's the desert. I've never been there before." Lan Ji, who was sitting beside her, was very excited. The boy with green hair behind her was also very excited. Okay, everyone be quiet." The teacher knocked on the podium with a ruler and said, "Due to the lack of resources, there are a total of 10 places to enter the desert this time." There was a wave of complaints. After all, there were more than 70 people in their class. If there were only 10 people entering the desert, wouldn't their chances be very small? Luo Qingchen glanced at Mu Lichuan, who was leaning against the window, from the corner of her eye. There was a faint light in his dark eyes. Since he liked photography so much, he would definitely go to the desert. This kind of person was extremely difficult to win over, and it was extremely difficult to gain a good impression of him. If she didn't think of a way to spend more time with him, she might lose a good impression of him one day. Teacher, can't you say more? It's such a good opportunity. Everyone wants to go. Yes, yes. And it's a desert with no man's land. It sounds very exciting. Oh no, I can't go. You have to take my soul with you. Everyone in the class was talking at once. Everyone seemed to be particularly interested in the desert in the no man's land. If he could take a different picture in the desert, it would become the pride of a photographer's life. I'll give everyone 3 days to submit their works. The homeroom teacher continued. Choose the top 10 entries and go to the desert with the exploration team. I really want to go. Lan Ji was still muttering in her ear. I'll hand in all my best works from the past few years and leave it to fate. Don't be nervous. Luo Qingchen responded with a chuckle. Surprises always happen unexpectedly. Lan Ji's personality was indeed very different from Lan Ting's. At least the feeling she gave her was more sincere. Thank you for your kind words, Qingchen. She smiled and turned around to look at the green-haired youth. When this big sister comes back, I'll bring you some sand from the no man's land. No, the green-haired youth said. I want to go to the no man's land and fill it with sand myself. Lan Ji was right. It would be more comfortable to get along with people who liked art. At least, compared to the previous mathematics department, this class was like heaven and hell. Chapter 28-22. 1 minute before the school bell rang, Luo Qingchen received a message from an unknown number. She opened the message and realized that it wasn't from an unknown number. Miss Luo, didn't you invite me for a meal? Why don't we meet today? Mu Lichuan. Luo Qingchen didn't know how Mu Lichuan got her number, but it made sense since he could get anyone's number. Didn't young Master Mu say that I can't afford it? Why don't we wait for another 2 years? Luo Qingchen. Her reply was a little naughty, probably because she wanted to make it sound like a rhyme. Cough cough. Since you're going back on your words, I'll just announce your identity. Mu Lichuan. Damn it. Did he have to be so direct? Brother, please have mercy on me. It's just a small matter. I know a restaurant that serves really good food. Luo Qingchen. Beep beep. In less than 2 seconds, she received a reply. I'll be waiting for you at the parking lot. Mu Lichuan. Luo Qingchen put down her phone and inadvertently looked up. Coincidentally, her eyes met Mu Lichuan's. He narrowed his eyes and a faint smile appeared on his face as he walked out of the classroom. Bai Shui, who had been paying attention to Mu Lichuan, saw this scene. Therefore, before Luo Qingchen reached the parking lot, she was blocked by Bai Shui. The gentle, cute, and considerate girl had finally taken off her glamorous mask. Luo Qingchen, stop right there. Her voice was different from Gu Zhu's sharp voice. It was deeper than usual. Luo Qingchen stopped in her tracks and narrowed her eyes. A faint light flashed in her eyes and a faint smile appeared on her face. What's wrong, Bai Shui? Are you finally going to show your true colors? She turned around calmly and leaned against the railing. There was a hint of coldness in her eyes. After coming to this plane, the number of girls he had to face wasn't an ordinary number. From Lan Ting to Gu Zhu, and now Bai Shui, it seemed like both Su Chern and Mu Lichuan were popular. What are you so proud of? How long do you think you can stay with young Master Li? Bai Shui walked down the stairs, crossed her arms and looked at her condescendingly. I advise you to hurry up and get lost, don't be wishful thinking. Hee hee. She narrowed her cold eyes and a faint smile appeared on her lips as she said, Don't you know in your heart whether the one dreaming is you or me? You. Bai Shui gritted her teeth. I'm just pitying you. Even if we leave young Master Li's side, we can still do well in school. But you're different. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes, and a dark light flashed through her eyes. Bai Shui continued, "Once young Master Li doesn't want you anymore, your life will be plunged into endless darkness. Therefore, those who didn't dare to touch you because of young Master Li will attack you together." "Oh, I see." Luo Qingchen pretended to be enlightened and said, "So, Bai Shui, you're still thinking about me?" "I'm not thinking about you at all. I just don't want you to cling on to young Master Li with your lowly status." Bai Shui widened her eyes and stared at Luo Qingchen. "You don't deserve it." Chapter 28-23. In comparison, she preferred this kind of confrontation. Wouldn't it be better to be direct with her? "Luo Qingchen, just you wait." Bai Shui stomped her feet in anger. Her face was red, but all she could do was stare at her back. Luo Qingchen didn't stop walking. She slowly raised her hand and waved it. "Too many people have said that to me. Unfortunately, they didn't end up well." B3 VIP car park. This place was much more spacious than she had imagined. However, as far as the eye could see, there were luxurious cars everywhere. Although the original owner had seen many luxurious cars, she had lived in an ordinary environment all these years. It was inevitable that her eyes would light up when she suddenly saw them. Beep, beep, beep. Mu Lichuan seemed to be worried that she couldn't see his car, so he honked twice. Luo Qingchen sat in the front passenger seat and habitually adjusted her seat. It seems like the daughter of the Luo family knows a lot about Maserati. Mu Lichuan chuckled and put on the seatbelt for her. "You're indeed the daughter of Chairman Luo, who owns a limited edition Maserati. Mu Lichuan, will you die if you don't tease me?" Luo Qingchen pretended to be angry as she looked at him. "Do you know how difficult it was for me to get to this car park from the classroom? Not only were there people looking at her, but there was also Bai Shui, who was a little devil on the inside. Thinking about it, fairy tales were all lies. Snow White might not be a good person. She wouldn't dare to cause you trouble." Mu Lichuan raised his eyebrows and smiled. "No one would dare to cause you trouble. After all, they were childhood sweethearts. Even if there was a test for the successor of the Luo family, it didn't stop him from protecting her. I suddenly feel that Mu Lichuan is a little charming." Luo Qingchen leaned her right hand against the window as she looked at his side profile. "No wonder you have so many fangirls. Since I'm so charming, what are you going to treat me to?" "Dinner." Luo Qingchen raised her right hand and set the location on the GPS. "Let's go." Sake, a stylish Japanese-style wine house. The original owner used to like this place very much. Maybe it was because the songs played in this shop were very suitable for her mood. Or perhaps it was because the thick-cut salmon in this restaurant was so fresh that people couldn't help but linger. In short, the original owner of this wine shop liked it very much. Deng, 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 deng. Luo Qingchen waved her hand and said, "Not bad, right? He really does eat rice." Mu Lichuan raised his eyebrows and said, "I just don't know how good your taste is. Based on what I've seen in the past, I don't think your taste is good." He already knew about the relationship between Luo Qingchen and Su Chen when he was at the hospital that day. From the United States to China, the reason they were together, the reason they were apart. There were so many people and things involved in this. Ku. Luo Qingchen could hear the meaning in his words. She cleared her throat and said, "She was young and didn't know anything back then, but now that she's grown up, her eyes are naturally better." "She's really grown up?" Mu Lichuan looked at her from head to toe and said, "She still looks like a little girl." "She's really grown up." Luo Qingchen looked at him. The warm light of the wine shop shone behind her. She narrowed her eyes and looked into his eyes, because the person standing beside her now is Mu Lichuan, not Su Chen. Chapter 28-24. She knew how to flirt with people. Moreover, Mr. Mu Lichuan seemed to be a little sensitive to flirting. In a situation where there were no words and they couldn't look at each other, affection was the best indicator. It seems like you've grown up," Mu Lichuan replied calmly with a gentle look in his eyes. In the private room on the second floor, the air was filled with the faint aroma of sake. The lights were warm and they could see the beach outside the window. 10 plates of thick-cut salmon, Arctic shellfish rolls, octopus salad, eel sushi and lastly, 2 miso soup. Luo Qingchen ordered about 20 dishes before closing the menu in satisfaction. Mu Lichuan squinted at her under the warm light of the table and asked, "You're eating so much?" "I'm just trying to show off my generosity." Luo Qingchen rested her chin on her left hand and smiled. After all, quantity makes up for the lack of quality. Mu Lichuan looked at her helplessly and chuckled. "It's fine if you eat a lot, but you're still blaming me. Eat as much as you want. I'll make sure you're full today." Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and said, "I even ordered 2 small hot pot dishes with beef." He replied calmly. Just as he was about to say something, he was interrupted by a familiar voice. "Let's go upstairs. It's quieter." "All right, you're the biggest on your birthday. As the saying goes, enemies always meet." She and Su Chun really bumped into each other wherever they went. She wondered if Su Chun would be overjoyed if they were still in the original owner's world. When Lan Ting and Su Chun appeared in front of them, at that moment, even the atmosphere seemed a little awkward. In the past, the original owner used to come to this izakaya with Su Chun. She found this place by accident. The owner was a chef who came back from studying in Japan. He was very good at making sushi and the taste was very unique. When they looked at each other, they could talk and laugh, but they could also say nothing. They were like that. Today was Su Chen's birthday, but she didn't remember. "Why don't we go to the first floor?" Lan Ting looked at Su Chun for a long time and noticed that her gaze was on Luo Qingchen. She couldn't help but say, "The first floor is pretty good too." "Let's go to the second floor," Su Chun replied faintly. She retracted her gaze and walked towards their usual seat. Luo Qingchen looked at Mu Lichuan and blinked. She bowed and said, "Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. You really don't want to meet him?" Mu Lichuan's eyes lit up and there was a faint glow in between his brows. Luo Qingchen nodded affirmatively and said, "Yes, I'm a big girl now." "Then is our chat special?" What do you mean?" She didn't know why, but looking at his half-smile, she felt that he was about to say something incredible. Ahem. In the next second, Mu Lichuan cleared his throat and asked, "Have you prepared the photos of the desert?" "Ah." Luo Qingchen came back to her senses and said while drinking water, "I'm ready." She thought he would say something special, but she didn't expect it to be about the school's trip to the desert. "Have you told Uncle and Auntie? No man's land is dangerous." PFFF. In an instant she almost spat out the water in her mouth. What was Mu Lichuan trying to do? Was he trying to reveal her identity here? This is too much of a gamble. Not yet. Luo Qingchen's eyes trembled and she said, "I'll tell them when I'm sure we can go." She felt that she was too concerned about it. After all, it was normal for friends to care about each other. Chapter 28-25. Message? What the hell was that? In the next second, she snapped out of her daze. They were childhood sweethearts. Mu Lichuan's house in the villa area was right next to hers. Su Chun, who was sitting next to them, paused for a second while holding the teacup. His heart skipped a beat. What did he care about? He didn't know, but he couldn't help but think about the things that happened when they were together. Over and over again, he couldn't get rid of them. Today isn't just your birthday. It's also Qingyu's birthday. Lan Ting opened a can of beer on the table and took a sip. She's my best friend. Let me give her a toast. Su Chen only snapped out of his daze when he heard the words Qingyu. That's right. He had the same birthday as her, and the first time he interacted with Qingyu was because their birthdays were the same. It was the anniversary of a coffee house. Both of them had chosen 1212 as their lucky number. At that time, they looked at each other and smiled. At that time, they fell in love at first sight. Su Chun picked up the can of beer on the table and opened it. He took 2 big gulps and said, "That's why I don't like to celebrate my birthday. Don't think too much. Since we're out for a meal, you should be happy. Lan Ting raised her glass and smiled sweetly. Happy birthday. Su Chen nodded and said, Thank you. The smell of beef hot pot came from not far away. He couldn't hear Luo Qingchen's voice clearly anymore. At the same time, Mu Lichuan looked at her as he washed the mutton. It seems like you've really grown up. You don't even remember his birthday. I still remember it. Luo Qingchen said, I just don't take it to heart. Some people would slowly disappear with the passage of time. As long as she didn't try to remember, there would be a moment when she couldn't even remember what he looked like. After dinner, she was full. When she left the izakaya, Su Chen and Lan Ting were still there. She seemed to have ordered a cake for him with candles on it. If Su Chen didn't do those things that hurt the original owner, she might be interested in hearing about him and in Qingyu's story. Luo Qingchen hadn't seen Su Chen since that night at the izakaya. It had snowed a few times in the academy, and the weather in City A seemed to have gotten colder. The photography department finally welcomed the biggest event of the year, a desert shoot. The entire photography department was participating in this trip to the desert, and each class only had 10 spots. Each student chose the photo they were most satisfied with and showed it to everyone. The teachers of the photography department would vote to select the students who would be allowed to film in the desert. Rows of photos were pulled like clothes hangers, and all the works were directly exposed to the sun. It was obvious at a glance whether he had talent or not. For example, Mu Lichuan. However, some of the photos were more abstract and special. Not everyone could understand them. For example, Luo Qingchen. Mu Lichuan's photo was taken at the moment of the avalanche. If she hadn't seen this photo, she wouldn't have known that someone of Mu Lichuan's status would be in such a dangerous place. He really loved photography. He loved photography with his life. Young Master Li is so outstanding. He's definitely an extinct rich second generation. I think so too. My heart is like a young girl. There are already so many girls around him. When will it be my turn? The dream is beautiful, but reality is the opposite of dreams. Damn it. Why am I so envious of Luo Qingchen? No, I'm not envious. I'm jealous. Chapter 28-26. Was there something wrong with these people's brains? Couldn't they talk about unrelated people when discussing gossip? Wasn't it strange to hear her name in a group of gossipy topics? Luo Qingchen walked all the way down and saw the photo she submitted at the end. It was a blank photo. Why was it a blank photo? Did she submit it wrongly? Could it be that someone had switched her photo? She furrowed her brows and paused for 2 seconds before she remembered. Why is this picture blank? But before she could explain it to the teacher, a certain enemy appeared again. Gu Zhu, a math student, actually came to look at the photo of the photography department. She didn't even need to think to know that they must be here to observe her work. Seeing her mocking face before she even spoke, people really wanted to rush forward and beat her up. However, for someone like Gu Zhu, the hurt caused by words was more serious than the hurt caused to her heart. However, before she could open her mouth to hurt her, Gu Zhu opened her mouth first. Ha 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 ha, what the hell is this? You want to join the desert tour group with a blank photo? You really went from the math department to the photography department. Gu Zhu's voice was as sharp as ever, so everyone's eyes fell on her. And in the next second, their eyes fell on Luo Qingchen's photo. Actually, if one looked closely, they would find that it was actually a snow scene, but from a distance it looked like a blank photo. Although I can see that it's a snow scene, it's not technical at all. But it really doesn't require any skill at all. A young man with glasses pushed up his glasses and said proudly. Gu Zhu naturally agreed. I'm right, aren't I? How can this kind of photo be chosen? The person who took it is really shameless. The boy with glasses continued. I heard that she used to be in the math department? Yes. Gu Zhu smiled meaningfully and said, It's a pity that she failed to seduce the professor, so she changed her target and went to the photography department to seduce young Masterly. TSK, TSK, TSK. The boy with glasses shrugged and narrowed his eyes at Luo Qingchen in disdain. She's really fickle. Student, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Su Chen's voice slowly sounded from not far away with a hint of gloominess. He seemed to be suppressing the anger in his heart and looked at Gu Zhu with a sharp gaze. Professor Su. Gu Zhu was shocked by the sudden voice. She pouted and said softly, I'm not wrong, not a single word. Su Chen didn't know what was wrong with him, but he seemed to be unable to suppress the anger in his heart. She had never seduced him. If she had to say that she provoked him, then he should be the one who provoked her. When he was in America, he didn't control over his emotions and rushed out to save her. Actually, with the speed of the car he could have saved her. But he still rushed out and then just like that, intruded into her life. Be good to her, protect her, and make her fall in love with him. But when she really fell in love with him, he cruelly abandoned her for his own reasons. Now that he thought about it, he really wasn't a good man. And in this situation, he couldn't turn a blind eye to others slandering her. Chapter 28-27. When he said this, even he himself was stunned for a moment. He wanted to stay away from her, but now, he couldn't help but want to get closer to her. Who was the one who couldn't let go? He had mocked himself countless times in his heart. In the end, he could lie to everyone, but he couldn't lie to himself. The surroundings suddenly became quiet. Only Gu Zhu's embarrassed face could be heard, as well as the attention of the crowd. Professor Su, you don't have to speak up for me. In the end, it was Luo Qingchen who broke the silence. She shrugged and smiled casually, because I don't need it. Why should she accept Su Chen's help? No matter what the situation was, Su Chen was a jerk in her eyes. He was the man who indirectly caused the death of the original owner in another world. This would never change. Cough, cough. Gu Zhu obviously felt that she had lost her momentum, so she quickly changed the topic. All right, that's your private matter. But I heard that there are very few places for the photography team to go to the desert. With Luo Qingchen's photography skills, she doesn't deserve to fight for a spot with those talented people. After saying this, she didn't forget to look at the bespectacled guy who agreed with her just now. She didn't know that the bespectacled guy was shivering at the side. The reason was, there was another man standing 5 meters away from them. He was wearing a white shirt and a navy blue sweater jacket. There was an ornamental scarf tied around his neck. Not only did he look casual, but he also looked very elegant. Mu Lichuan, the person who no one in the royal school dared to offend. Gu Zhu's heart skipped a beat. What happened at the bar was still fresh in her mind. Plus, the news about Luo Qingchen and Mu Lichuan's relationship had spread like wildfire in the school. Regardless of whether it was true or not, at least she could confirm that Luo Qingchen was the one who could stand beside Mu Lichuan in the near future. She couldn't accept this. She really couldn't. Why did she have everything, but she couldn't compare to an ordinary student who had nothing? Young Masterly. Gu Zhu clenched her teeth and suddenly nodded. I know that you and Luo Qingchen are close, but I also heard that there are very few spots for this trip to the desert. There are so many classes in the photography department and so many people want to go. Wouldn't it be unfair to give a spot to someone with such rubbish photography skills? How sonorous and forceful, how righteous his words were. He was simply the embodiment of justice. In the next second, Mu Lichuan narrowed his cold eyes and said, You're just an outsider. What right do you have to judge a photo from our photography department? Even if you can't tell that this photo is special, it doesn't mean that others can't. Actually, I seem to have noticed something. The green-haired boy sitting behind Luo Qingchen carefully observed Luo Qingchen's photo with a magnifying glass and said in surprise, Could it be this photo? Gu Shu, why do you look so panicked? Lanji happened to walk over from the other side and said, "Don't ruin Qingqin's photo. I even prepared a tent for 2 people." Although it was her first day meeting Luo Qingqin, she had heard about what happened between Luo Qingqin and Su Chen from her sister. At that time, she felt that Su Chen was wrong, but her sister went against her morals and thought that he was right. Chapter 28. I think the teacher who developed the photo didn't see Qingqin's name. Mu Lichuan removed the cap from his head and casually put it on her head. He smiled and said, "The resolution wasn't right when I was developing the photos." Actually, she had to admit that Mu Lichuan was smart. After all, there were so many men in this world who weren't smart. However, when he said those words with such certainty, she was still stunned. Everyone looked at each other with puzzled expressions on their faces. Luo Qingqin seriously looked at Mu Lichuan and couldn't help pursing her lips into a smile. The atmosphere was good. Everyone's suspicion didn't matter to him at all. It was as if as long as people understood him, it was fine. Perhaps it was because of Luo Qingqin's indifferent face that didn't change at all, or perhaps it was because of Mu Lichuan's proud and confident eyes. Gu Zhu was a bit panicked. Could it be that there was something wrong with this blank photo? What does young Masterly mean? Is there something we can't see in this photo? I think so. Otherwise, the green-haired man wouldn't be looking at it with a magnifying glass. The more he looked, the more excited he got. Then why can't we see it? Why does he have to use a magnifying glass to see what's in the photo? I'm sorry. An unfamiliar voice interrupted the crowd's discussion. She immediately walked to Luo Qingqin's photo and hung up another photo. This photo and the first photo gave people a visual impression of 2 different worlds, but this second photo made people's eyes suddenly light up. On top of the snowy mountain, the snow formed a pillar that extended to the bottom of the sea. Wherever the ice pillar reached, the sea creatures would freeze to death. This natural phenomenon was known as the icicle of death. However, there weren't many people in this world who had seen the icicle of death with their own eyes, let alone taking a photo of it. Usually, this phenomenon would only happen within 3 seconds. When Luo Qingqin adjusted the focus and pressed the shutter, it was already above 0. Therefore, the light reflected by the lens of her camera was different. If one wanted to see the icicle of death in its entirety, they would have to enlarge the photo infinitely. This way, not only would they be able to see the icicle of death that extended to the bottom of the sea, but they would also be able to see the frozen fish and prawns in the icicle. When Luo Qingqin submitted this photo, she did ask the teacher to enlarge it. It was a pity that the teacher had completely forgotten about this matter. The person who stood out was none other than Mu Lichuan. Perhaps he already felt that something was different when he saw the photo. It took about the same time as Luo Qingqin. Luo Qingqin was standing there in a daze, listening to the gossip of the crowd. He went to find the teacher and had the teacher magnify it by 3 times. As expected, the result was completely different from the snow-white color from before. Wow! That's amazing! Chapter 28-29. It's really the icicle of death. Lan Ji ran forward and took Gu Shu's magnifying glass. After looking at it for a while, she said, "Not only does it depend on hand speed, but it also depends on luck. Qingqin, how did you do it?" "Yes. Student Luo's luck is also very good." The teacher who brought the second photo said, "The teachers in the photography department's office were all talking about you just now. You have both luck and ability. It's really amazing. It's the first time I've seen someone take a picture of the icicle of death. There's no distinction between high and low when it comes to learning art. Some laymen shouldn't be jealous. We don't care so much. Don't make people uncomfortable." Gu Zhu's face was getting worse and worse. Even her lips were pale. She bit her lip and her whole face seemed to be twisted together. She looked at her and said, "It's just good luck. There's nothing great about a person who takes photos based on luck." She was very angry. Every time she was fully prepared to find trouble with Luo Qingchen, the result was always the opposite of what she imagined. Her identity was clearly so noble. Why did she always lose to such a lowly person? Luo Qingchen looked at Gu Zhu, who was burning with anger but couldn't control herself. She wanted to give her a fatal blow. After all, the one who provoked first was cheap. She couldn't be blamed. Luck? She looked up coldly. There was a touch of coldness in her clear eyes. She smiled and said, "Do you think everything in this world is based on luck? Are you kidding me? Could it be that you can predict when the icicle of death will appear?" Gu Zhu crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked at her with disdain. "Please, don't talk nonsense. It's not terrible to be uneducated. What's terrible is to pretend that you're knowledgeable. That's really embarrassing." Luo Qingchen nodded slightly. A confident light flashed in her eyes as she looked at Gu Zhu and said, "Before the icicle of death appears, there will be a butterfly trip in the South Pole. The butterfly's name is Hidden Ice Butterfly." "TSK, you think you're so great just because you know the name of a butterfly?" Although Gu Zhu didn't know what the Hidden Ice Butterfly was, she still had to fight back. After all, no matter what happened during an argument, one could not be at a disadvantage verbally. This had always been her style, which was why those men who loved her called her Queen Zhu, because she had the aura of a queen. The problem is that most people can't see this kind of butterfly. Luo Qingchen said with a relaxed smile, "Most people include you. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 50%. Luo Qingchen was stunned for a moment. Under such circumstances, the most likely reason why Mu Lichuan was able to improve her impression of him was because he knew what the ice butterfly was. It was an extremely small butterfly with a pair of transparent wings. It was about 10 times smaller than an object that could be seen with the naked eye. They grew in places with extremely low temperatures, such as the South Pole or the North Pole. In the original owner's memory, it was mentioned that her eyesight was very good. This kind of good eyesight was beyond the scope of human knowledge. After coming to this plane, Luo Qingchen could also feel that her eyesight was special. For example, when she ate half-cooked beef, she could see the bacteria on it. For example, bacteria in tap water, or fungi on mushrooms, etc. Chapter 2830. Gu Zhu obviously didn't understand what Luo Qingchen meant. She wanted to say something else, but was interrupted by Mu Lichuan's next words. The hidden ice butterfly is a microorganism in the eyes of many scientists. Because it's too small, people can't see it with the naked eye. Mu Lichuan's beautiful eyes landed on Luo Qingchen. If Qingchen can see the hidden ice butterfly, it means that her vision is different from ours. She didn't know why, but when she saw Mu Lichuan explaining seriously, she felt that he was especially handsome. Perhaps it was because Mu Lichuan had spoken, so even if Gu Zhu wanted to argue, she didn't dare to say a word. She still had a lingering fear from what happened at Muse that day. Now that she heard Mu Lichuan's voice, she felt goosebumps all over her body. How different can it be? Gu Zhu didn't answer, but another person stood up. It was Lan Ji's sister, Lan Ting, who had been in love with Su Chun for many years. What's different? We from the photography faculty don't need to explain to you. Mu Lichuan looked up coldly and narrowed his eyes. You don't have the right to listen. Compared to Gu Zhu, he probably hated people who gossiped behind their backs more. Lan Ting was one of them. Perhaps it was because everyone could feel that Mu Lichuan's tone was different. Those who admired Mu Lichuan responded immediately. Hey, where did you come from? Can you be careful when you talk to young Masterly? She's not from our faculty. What does it have to do with you? Don't you know? She lives by the sea and has more control than anyone else. I heard that she was the one who gossiped about what happened between Luo Qingchen and Professor Su. You can't get what you love. What's the use of being good-looking? You're such a villain. This wave of comments was probably very hurtful to Lan Ting. She rarely saw her pale face. It was as if the secret that had been buried in her heart for a long time was suddenly revealed. "I'm just asking a question. Young Master Li, you don't have to be so hostile." After a long while, Lan Ting took a deep breath and defended herself. "I didn't say anything about Luo Qingchen. Actually, she had been waiting. She waited for the man to speak up to protect her. After all, in her heart, if there was no so-called Qingyu heart, Su Chen should care more about her, not Luo Qingchen. But Su Chen, even when everyone's eyes were on her, he didn't speak up for her. She didn't know why. She only knew that her heart felt terrible. This uncomfortable and endless wait finally had a turn for the better, but the direction of the situation was completely different from what she had imagined. And Qingyu had been dead for 4 years, but the person Su Chen cared about again wasn't her. Why? Why did she work so hard? She fell in love with Su Chen even earlier than in Qingyu, but Su Chen never gave her a chance. "You didn't say it, but you did." Mu Lichuan walked forward from the photo and stood firmly beside Luo Qingchen. With a frivolous look in his eyes, he said, "Moreover, I'm a housekeeper. You're targeting her, so I'm targeting you. Is that wrong?" In the next second, everyone's eyes fell on Mu Lichuan. Chapter 28-31. Everyone gasped in unison. It was enough to prove how cool Mu Lichuan was when he said, "Protect her." Some of them didn't believe that the girl standing next to Mu Lichuan was Luo Qingchen at first, but now they had no choice but to believe it. Lan Ting took a deep breath and looked at Su Chen from the corner of her eye. But Su Chen's eyes had been on Luo Qingchen the entire time, never moving at all. At this moment she wanted to cry, but she knew that she couldn't. She turned around proudly and left the place. Along the way, she could hear the murmurs, and all of them were unpleasant words. Why? Why was the goddess of luck always so far away from her? Why? Why wasn't she the person that Su Chen cared about after waiting for 4 years? The exhibition was a success. Luo Qingchen also explained to the students how she managed to take the picture of the icicle of death. The icicle of death was a special phenomenon. It only appeared for a short period of time, but it was very spectacular. Before the icicle of death appeared, the movement of the Antarctic crust increased significantly. At this time, a creature called the hidden ice butterfly would appear. In other words, as long as one could see the hidden ice butterfly, they would be able to avoid the icicle of death. It wasn't luck. Gu Zhu stomped her feet in anger and left the photography faculty under the crowd's size. She hated poor students, and she hated poor students like Luo Qingchen even more. She hated poor students like her even more. In her eyes, this was an extremely ridiculous thing. Poverty was a symbol of low status. Wealth was a symbol of aristocracy. In her eyes, this was the truth, and it would never change. In the end, the 30 people from the photography faculty who went to the desert were Mu Lichuan, Luo Qingchen, Lan Ji, Gu Shu, the bespectacled man, and Bai Shui. Speaking of Bai Shui, her photo was taken in front of a shark. It was still a very dangerous scene, but when the teacher asked her to describe the photo, she stuttered and said something very official. This made everyone doubt the authenticity of the photo, or maybe she had hired the shooter to take the photo. But as long as the shooter didn't show up, no one could prove that the photo was fake. Naturally, Bai Shui didn't like Luo Qingchen. However, since she didn't know much about photography, and she had to appear obedient in front of Mu Lichuan, she didn't say a word when Luo Qingchen and Gu Zhu had a conflict in the morning. It was the last theory class of the photography department. After the bell rang, the homeroom teacher said, "The 10 students in our class who have won the chance to film in the desert should go home tonight and prepare well. This time we are going to the desert, so it will be a little dangerous. If you are afraid, you can choose not to go." If you're not going, please tell me, I'll fill the empty spot," a fat man said. "Don't. Give the opportunity to the girls." "I'll fill the empty spot," a girl with round eyes said. In fact, for people who liked photography, the word dangerous was inevitable to a certain extent. After all, if he wanted to take different photos, he would have to go to places where there were fewer people or no one. Therefore, if it was so difficult to obtain a spot, it was impossible for those who had obtained it not to go.